All right, I think we're good to get started and folks can just kind of trickle in towards the beginning. My name is Anna Massoglia. I'm the Editorial and Investigations Manager at OpenSecrets. I'm joined here by Tim Sandler, our Partnerships Coordinator, and Brendan Glavin, our Deputy Research Director. We're so excited to get a chance to chat with y'all today about how to track money in politics in the lead up to the 2024 election cycle. Just to give a little bit of background about me, my research areas include dark money, foreign influence, as well as just kind of helping with editorial issues related to a variety of things from lobbying to campaign finances to a variety to everything else we track. So really excited to help hopefully train y'all on some tools, give you some skills for the election. If you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat or in the Q&A, and we'll locate some time towards the end to go over that or answer them as they come in, depending on how time sensitive they are. With that, I will pass over to, let's see if Tim is here yet. I will pass it over to Brendan to give a quick intro and take it from there.
Thanks, Anna. Again, I'm Brendan Glavin, Deputy Research Director. I've been working in the money and politics space for since 2001. More of on the data side. I've worked a lot with federal data, campaign contributions, independent expenditures, and also worked a lot with state data. So I'm going to go ahead and get started on that end. I'm going to talk a little bit about the state side, and then I'm going to turn it over to Anna, and she's going to look at the OpenSecrets site and some of the federal data and some of the added value that we bring to the data, things that we do that are available on the site. So just a little bit quickly about OpenSecrets. Because we're going to show you two different websites. We have a website, followthemoney.org, and we have opensecrets.org. The organization OpenSecrets is they came together, the merger of the National Institute in Money and Politics and Center for Responsive Politics. The National Institute was focused on state data and ran the website followthemoney.org, and CRP has ran opensecrets.org for many years. So we're in the process of putting that all together into one site, but now for this election cycle, we have two sites, and I'm going to start off by showing you Follow the Money and the state data. I'm going to do share my screen here. All right, so this is followthemoney.org. Here we have anything state related that you may be interested in. State legislatures, state houses, assemblies, state senate, gubernatorial races, any other kind of statewide race, attorney general, secretary of state, anything like that, whatever it may be that's elected statewide, we're going to track that as well. And we do have some judicial races in here as well. If appellate races and state Supreme Court races, we have information on those. So this is where you can find all that state data. When you come to the site, we're going to talk a little bit about how can you find certain things. We're going to, you may be interested in, say, the candidate you're interested in, and we have a search box at the top. You can just go in and drop in a name and do that. I'll show an example of that in a little bit. But also, you may not know, or you may want to look at a race. Or you may not know the candidates that are in the race yet, so you want to get to that. So we have a map. You can click on the state you're interested in. We also have drop down menus, which are basically going to get you the same thing. I can go here and look, pick a state, and you can choose the year. It's going to default to 2024, but as you can see, we have a lot of historical data here. So if you're interested in looking back at maybe a particular district, and you say, well, I want to know what happened in that district. Who are the candidates? What kind of money did they raise? 2 years ago. You can, drop back to the 2022 and look at that. So for this, we'll look at, 2024. If I click through on that, it's going to bring me to a generic page for that state and that cycle. Here we have California 2024. We can see it's giving me the aggregate sort of information saying, all right, for the state house, the assembly, we're tracking 248 candidates, raised almost $89 million. That's what we have so far. And in the Senate, 80 candidates, about $39 million. Now, if you want to get down, drill down in that, we have several tabs up here. You can click on the candidates tab, and that allows you to start drilling down. So I can see, okay, here we have State House Assembly races. And if I open that up, it's going to show me each and every race. Then, so I can go, okay, well, I'm interested in District 2. Now, open that up, it's going to show me all the candidates who were in that race. And you can see, we see who the primary candidates is showing. What's showing is we have 2 candidates that are pending for the general, and then we're showing the 4 candidates or 5 candidates who lost in the primary earlier in the year. Of course, as we go across here, you can see information about their party. What's the status of the seat? Is it, are they incumbents, challengers, or is it an open seat? And then how much money did each of these candidates raise? Now, anytime we're on the site and you see one of these a row with a result here, and you see this little magnifying glass, that allows you can click through and you can see the specific data that's associated with that row. So if we were interested in Rusty Hicks and wanted to see more specifics about his candidacy, I can click on that. It's going to open up a new tab. And here we can see, now it's giving us a lot more options. This, it's just defaults to the total like we already saw on the other page, but now we have a lot of check boxes here. It can be a little intimidating, but I'm just going to show you some of the sort of, easy basic things you can do to, drill down and get more information. The first thing you do is you can check on the box that says record, and that's going to give you, it's just going to show you every individual contribution record that we have for 2024 for Rusty Hicks. So it's going to tell you, you can say who's the contributor, how have we coded that contributor, and I'll get a little bit more into that in a second. How much they gave, when it was the contribution was given. So you can go through and you see the whole list of all the contributors. Now, with that, you may, after looking at that, you maybe say, well, it'd be nice to know, like, I'd like to aggregate that up so I know like who actually were the biggest contributors. So if I uncheck record and then change it to contributor, now it's giving me an aggregate for each actual contributor. So here we have a number of them at the, all at the same amount, which I would assume is the contribution limit, since it would be odd for everybody to be giving $10,900. But you can see that it's not always just one contribution. So we can hear now the professional engineers, they have 4 contributions totaling 10.9. So by doing this sort of aggregation by contributor, it makes it easier to see, okay, who are the people who are giving the most, what level are they giving? Now I mentioned the other part about coding. We take all the records and wherever we can, based on, mostly on employer, some of it based on occupation, but we put industry and sector codes on the data on at the contribution level based on that information. So if I was to check on the sector and industry boxes, now it's going to readjust and it's going to give me information about, what sectors or what industries were all these donors coming from. Now, obviously, in this case, you can see it's very strong, labor and different types of unions. So that's, some pretty useful information. We can see, okay, the money coming to this candidate is obviously very heavily weighted from union money. So again, you can check and uncheck any of these boxes, and then it's just going to automatically, it's going to readjust what you're seeing. So that's an example how you can drill down and see information about, you can find information about a race, and then the candidates are in that race, and then, look at specific information about those candidates. And of course, like I said, when you click through there, it opened up a new tab. So I can always jump back to the old tab and see where I started here and if I wanted to look at one of the other candidates. So I wanted to look quickly then about how, other ways to search the site. So that was sort of that drill down look. Now say, well, what if I know the name of a candidate or maybe the name of an organization that I'm interested in? We're going to use today throughout the presentation, we're going to use Hakeem Jeffries as an example of someone who ran at the state level and then is obviously at the federal level now, and so you can see, okay, I kind of want to look back in the past and see what happened at the state level, and then when Anna shows us the Open Secrets site, she's going to go through and show you a profile page we have for him at the federal level. So I'm going to do the search for him. You can see when you execute that search, it's going to give you a list of anything in the database that is attached, hits on that name. And what we're going to do is I'm going to, on the left here, you can filter it down and say, well, I want to know about the candidate. And then when I click on candidates, it's going to show me, okay, well, here's the entry for the candidate that we're looking for. When I click on that, and I click on it's going to give us a general data tab. We're going to get like a profile page for that candidate. You can see here, if I scroll down, we can see it goes back to 2000, where his first race he ran and lost, and then subsequently had 3 races he won for the New York State Assembly. And we have all the information for how much he raised in each of those races. You do see on this Follow the Money site, you see some, in a search like this, you'll see some federal stuff show up, because we used to put federal data on Follow the Money, but we stopped doing that after 2020. So really, I would defer to looking anything federal. I would defer to looking on Open Secrets. But so what we're focused in on here is being able to see that information that goes back to when they were a state candidate. Now, other pieces of information when you on this profile for whichever candidate you're on, you can see there's on the left we have a tab for top donors. So you can see sort of that same kind of aggregated donor information I showed you on the other page, where say, and this is for the history of the candidate. It's showing how much was given by these different groups, and then by industries, and it's showing you of all the records that we've coded, what those associations are. And additionally, up here we have on the top going across, we have an office holder tab, and you can find some useful, not necessarily financial disclosure related information, but info that's related. Like, so we say, okay, which obviously which offices were held, but what committees did they sit on over time, and then any sponsored legislation by that candidate, by the office holder. And so that can be a pretty useful piece, if you look at sponsored legislation and then, put that up against a donor list, and, may or may not be able to, there might be some interesting connections there between the donors and, legislation that's being sponsored by the member. So that is a good quick look at what a profile of an individual, an office holder candidate looks like. I also want to quickly look at what it would look like for a group. So again, using the search right at the top of the page, if I was interested in not a candidate, but a group, someone who's a donor or otherwise an actor in the space. So I chose Amazon. Now you're going to get a lot of different results there, but we scroll down here, we can see here we have Amazon.com, $15 million. When I click, and I preloaded this page, but if I click through on that, this is the profile for Amazon.com we have on FTM, tracking almost $16 million in contributions over 22 years. And so for a group like this, we have a little bit different options for tabs on the profile. Some of it's the same. We have industry breakdown, like, well, this is just tells you what industry is this group in. And then we can go through and say, okay, what candidates have they donated to? And this gives you a listing, for highest contribution down. So this is all, over time. You can see what year it was given, who received the contributions, say, did they give to party committees? And you can see here, California Republican Party, received over $400,000, but also the California Democratic Party also received over $400,000. There's ballot measure committees. Have they contributed money to committees that were dedicated to either supporting or opposing specific ballot measures? Independent spenders. These would be groups that are making independent expenditures, for spending money for or against particular candidates at the state level. So those are some of the main tabs you can. And I also wanted to show lobbying. So especially with large groups like this, somebody like Amazon, they're going to be involved in lobbying too. So if you click on the lobbying tab, you can see, well, this is, it says, oh, they have one client over 5 years. But then if you look at them, not just in that way, but if you say, well, let's look at them as a spender, then we see, what we've been able to track, 23 and a half $1 million in lobbying expenditures over that time. And then you can again drill down and say, well, who did they pay that money to? And then perhaps more interesting might be, especially if you're interested in a particular state, be like, okay, well, what states are they spending that money in? So you can see California was the top place where they were lobbying spending. You can also break it down by year as well. One thing about the when you look at like the state breakdown, I have to mention about the lobbying is at the state level, we do not have spending data for all 50 states. In fact, it's only about 20 states, because in most cases, states do not require the compensation paid to lobbyists to be reported. And without that, then you really don't have a clear picture of what's going on with lobbying. There may be some reporting that of gifts and small things like that, but the bulk of the money, if you want to know what's going on, you need to know who's not just who's being paid, but how much are they being paid. So, but for where we do have that data, it is available here. Most of the big states we have California, Florida, Texas, New York, we have this data. So it can be very useful where it exists. Okay, so that's a quick overview of the information on followthemoney.org. I'm going to do a real fast look at the Federal Election Commission site, just to give people an idea of how can you get go to the Federal Election Commission site and find information about candidates, or maybe it's a PAC, or either way.
Hey, Brendan, before we do that, there's a few questions in the Q&A tab.
All right, so the ballot initiatives, I think is best. We'll show that. We ported over ballot initiative information to, it's on followthemoney.org, but we also have it on OpenSecrets, and I think we'll maybe before I jump over to Anna, I'll show that really quick. And
one other is how up to date Follow the Money is, and also how this compares to Transparency USA, which I noticed.
So I mean, we don't really know what. I don't know what Transparency USA is doing. I know they have 21 states now that they do. One thing they do that, there is some information they collect that we don't, but I also don't know about anything about their sort of how they're coding or aggregate. They're certainly not doing any kind of like industry coding, that sort of thing. And how much they're matching up donors. And one of the things we do is give donors unique IDs so we can track how much they've given over time, not just in one cycle, but over the course. So other than that, I'm not really sure how much, what their collection, process is like. As far as updating the data, at the state level, so I'll just say very quickly, because it's easy. At the federal level, you're going to see reports on October 15th that cover through 9/30, and then you're going to see reports on the 24th that are going to cover through the first week of 2 weeks of October. And that's very clear cut. At the state level, it's all very, they all have their own schedules. But generally speaking, as soon as we can get the data after the deadline, we grab that data and process it and get it up on our site as quickly as we can. The qualifications on that are sometimes we can't get it super quick. If their state uses paper filing, then that really slows things down. Because we have to have people hand input data off of paper reports. And yes, that is still a thing in 2024 in some places. And then so there are other things that can slow down delivery of it. But as soon as we can get it, we're turning that around and getting it up on the site. So I would say, like, if a state is filing, say they have a quarterly report that's due, say through, in the beginning of October, we're going to get that up, by, we're going to have that up before election day.
And I'll just add one thing, that if you're not sure if something's been updated on the OpenSecrets site, please reach out to us and we're always happy to provide the information. Most of the pages are pretty clearly, or on the Follow the Money site, most of the pages are pretty clearly labeled. But if you aren't seeing something, please let us know and we're always happy to send over additional information as well. I think we can hold the rest of the questions for the end, since they're about other levels of government. But if you wanted to get started on the FEC, we can hold the other questions and answer those towards the end. We'll carve out some time for that.
Okay. So a quick look at the FEC. I want to, when you come to the FEC, really where you're going to want to go to find information about candidates or PACs, you're going to want to go to the campaign finance data section. So if I click on that and I go click through to that, that's going to allow me to bring up a search where I can go through and find specific profile pages for candidates and committees. So I'm going to stick with our example here. So it has a nice fill-in feature. So you start typing it in, it's going to fill in. I'm saying, okay, here's Hakeem Jeffries. I'm going to do a search on that, and it's going to show me every candidate has the file register as a candidate. And then separately, if they're spending money, raising money, then they have to create a committee, and the committee is responsible for keeping track of all the spending and money coming in, money going out, and they're responsible for filing the reports detailing all this according to the FEC rules. So if I click through Jeffries for Congress, that's going to give me the profile page for that. And it's going to give you the very basic information of when is the data covered through, how much was raised, how much was spent, total disbursements, how much money did they have in the bank at the end of that period, as of 6/30 in this case. So really, like, the baseline information about what's coming in, what's going out, how much. And the one thing I want to point out here is this right here, there's a filings tab. And this is important. If, say, it is a reporting day, or you want to go in and you want to see, I want to see the information on the report that was just filed, or I specifically want to see the last report that came in. So when you click on the filings, it's going to show you chronologically the last reports that came in. So here, July quarterly was the last one. It's going to tell you right here, it's going to say this is the current version of this report. So if sometimes they file amendments, but this is saying, okay, this is the current version of this report. I can click through here, and it's going to show me a page it's specific for this report. It's showing basically that information we just saw on that other page, except it's not formatted as nice, but it includes the information that just says this period, meaning just for that last reporting period, as opposed to what we saw before as cumulative. So that can be useful to look and say, okay, how much in this case, how much in just in the last 3 months? And if you really want to, drill down a little farther, they provide a download option. So you can download a PDF if you want to look at it in that format. That can be difficult to kind of work with. So they do have a CSV. So you can download all the raw data from this particular report. And if you want to go through and say, look at the names of donors who gave in that 3-month period, or you want to look at the people who got paid, vendors who got paid by the campaign in that 3 months, and you want to see the actual raw data for yourself, you can download the CSV and you can look through that. And that can be really useful if, if it's the day of the report or the day after, and you want to mine some information very quickly, it's a good place to go and grab that. So I think I will go quickly and show the ballot stuff, and then I'll turn it over to Anna. We had a question about that. So moving over to the OpenSecrets site, we have a ballot measures section under elections and fundraising data. We have ballot measures. And we'll click through on that. We have a nice, first of all, we have a drop down so you can choose different cycles. And then there's a map feature so you can go and look and see particular states. So, California is always a big one with the ballot measures. So starting there, you go through, we have a list of the measures and just tell you how much that we've recorded so far, money raised in support or money raised in opposition. And if you click through on that measure, then it's going to detail like, how did we get that total amount? Well, here we're detailed the different committees that we've tracked and how much each one of those individual committees has raised and whether or not those committees are, operating in support or opposition to that proposition. And then, if you go through and say, I'm going to the actual, allows you to click through again to the actual committee. So this one, unsurprisingly, the Uber Innovation Committee is completely, this is going to show you the donors. In this case, is completely funded by Uber. So it's telling, but not a great example. But if I clicked on this Newsom ballot measure committee, then you can see, okay, here are all the different groups that have put money into this committee that's related to that ballot measure. So that's sort of how you can drill down. And I think the other piece to it is if you want to look at it by category or sort of subject matter. So you can do essentially the same thing, but you can do it to, I'm interested in one that's about abortion or marijuana, healthcare, whatever it may be. Then you can drill down and look at it in that manner. So that said, I will turn it over to Anna so she can talk a little bit more about how we, some of that data I talked about, you can get raw data from the FEC, and that's where we get all our contribution and expenditure data for the federal side. And she'll talk a little bit about what we add on to that and what we can provide on OpenSecrets.
Sounds great. But Brendan, before I let you go,
Yeah.
if you scroll down to the bottom of this page, I see that we're getting a lot of questions already, just to kind of like start us about how often our site is updated,
Yeah.
state versus federal, how does it reflect how dated the information is? Can we rely on this reporting? Absolutely, you can rely on this. I highly recommend scrolling to the bottom of most pages. You should be able to see the last updated date, so you can see just how new this information is compared to when the last reporting deadline was. And so we have a lot of great resources on that. So most pages should have this as of most recently updated date on them. It's going to be different across different sections of the site. As Brendan kind of mentioned, we have campaigns which file on either monthly or quarterly basis. At this point, I guess monthly. You have primary reports. And so in order to keep track of and then you have, of course, outside spending, which is updated multiple times every day, and a variety of different state level disclosure deadlines. And so I think it's important just to scroll down to the bottom and note those. So Brendan, thank you. I just wanted to show them the date, the as of date for this. Did you have anything you wanted to add on that?
Yeah, I would say, because usually sort of the follow on to that is, right, there's different types of data. And when we look at, and Ann will show you the candidate stuff, but when you look at that top level candidate information I showed, like on the FEC page, when that gets filed, we pick that up immediately. The next day, it'll be on our site saying, that, that's how much was raised, how much was spent. But when we get into talking about stuff that's like coded, where we talk about the industry coding and who the aggregating contributors and doing the industry coding, that takes some time. So that can be, that's at least a week after the report is filed, where we have time to process all that and get it up on the website. And like Anna said, that'll be displayed in the dates at the bottom.
Absolutely. So yeah, I know there's a few other questions. A lot of those are going to be answered by the next part of the presentation. So y'all are taking the words out of my mouth. And if anything isn't addressed by the end, I'm happy to go over that as well. But just to go over some of the sections of the OpenSecrets site and share my page, we have a wide, I guess just to start with a couple of the questions. So this is not just campaign data. It also includes information about parties, about outside spending groups like super PACs that can raise and spend unlimited money on supporting candidates. It includes, to some extent, 527 data, dark money data, as we're able to find it. Pretty much everything on the OpenSecrets site that's reported to the Federal Election Commission, you should be able to find there, as well as some value adds from OpenSecrets. One really great question I also wanted to approach is whether it's better to use follow the money or the FEC.gov data, which I also am going to add also the OpenSecrets data. So I think you can get different things from different platforms, which I think is really important going into this section on the OpenSecrets site, where basically OpenSecrets is really good for more aggregate data. You can see things like those industries at the federal level. You can see sectors. And I'll get into a lot more of that in a bit. The Federal Election Commission site is really great at the federal level for being able to see the filings themselves. Sometimes there's more granular data if you're really digging into an investigation, seeing what the address is of something. We don't post addresses. If you're digging into the specifics and want to see the filings, the PDFs themselves, or if you want something quicker, since it takes a few days for everything to load on our site, if you're trying to break the news right around a filing deadline, that's another great use of the FEC site. Follow the money is primarily for the state level data at this point. Eventually that will be integrated into the OpenSecrets section of the site, or the OpenSecrets.org site versus the followthemoney.org site. But as of right now, that is a great location, a great place for all state level data. There's some data on the OpenSecrets site that'll have state level, but it's a little bit more limited. So if you're looking for something at the state level outside of ballot measures or some donor lookup stuff, highly recommend the followthemoney.org site. And happy to go into that a little bit more depth later once I go over the aggregate numbers. So say you're looking into an election or looking into your location, or looking into an organization, we have a lot of resources on all of the above. Just since I know we were talking about Amazon just a minute ago, I'm going to show our organization profile pages because I think these are just a really valuable, amazing place to get started. We base this on how the different individuals who are reporting their contributions to the Federal Election Commission classify their employer, or based on PACs that are affiliated with different organizations or corporations. So looking at Amazon here, you can just type in amazon.com. And you can see all of the contributions that Amazon or their affiliates have made this election cycle. You can scroll back and see prior election cycles. You can see any related organizations that are owned by that company if it's a major corporation, as well as how much is spent on lobbying, or if they are an organization that spends directly on outside spending like a super PAC or a nonprofit, you would also see that here. If you're interested in how those contributions are broken down, you can scroll down and see the top recipients below. Oftentimes it will be presidential candidates who are topping the list, or big super PACs that can get more money. But one thing I really wanted to note that's important here is it's not always the organization itself contributing. You see the breakdown here from individuals or from an organization. When it's from individuals, that means that it is people, in the case of a company, people who either work for the company or their immediate family, like a dependent spouse. We go through and manually code that at OpenSecrets. So that's something that is one of the value adds that you would be able to get here versus the FEC site. You can see employer in the filings independently on the FEC site, but we go through and standardize employer names, standardize careers, and standardize industries, that you can see that here. When you look at from organization, that's either going to be a corporate PAC affiliated with a company or the company itself giving. If it's giving to a candidate directly, I would more likely than not going to be the corporate PAC, because corporations cannot give directly to candidates. They can give to super PACs, which can raise and spend unlimited sums as long as they don't coordinate with candidates, but they can't give directly. And so this will be money either from the corporate PAC or from the corporation itself, depending on who it goes to. You can see type, so see if it's a political party, a 527, a candidate, a carry committee, which is a type of hybrid super PAC. So we have a lot of different information here. And as you'll notice, it's pretty, it's not uncommon for major corporations to give across the aisle. You see people giving who work at the organization to giving to Trump as well as to Harris. And so it's not uncommon for either employees of corporations to have a lot of different views, or for a company itself to get to kind of hedge its bets and give on both sides of the aisle. And so you can see that here. You can see totals by cycle, how much came from individuals versus organizations, what the breakdown is in terms of who they were giving to. Again, this is all federal level, whether it's candidates, party committees, outside groups. This can supplement kind of what you saw in Follow the Money with Amazon, as well as those source of funds, and more of a breakdown over time of who they're giving to based on the ideology of the group or the viewpoint or of the candidate, or who they're registered as well as kind of the amounts over time. If you're wanting more detailed information, the totals tab of that is great, where you can see a really easy breakdown of how much money from either employees or affiliates of the company gave to conservatives versus liberal groups, or for Republicans versus Democratic candidates. You can also see the source, and just a lot of different ways to slice and dice those same numbers. If you're interested in who they gave money to directly, you can see more of a default here of just kind of, was it incumbents versus non-incumbents? Are they House members? Are they Democrats, Republicans? Kind of getting that breakdown of where within the federal government these recipients are, as well as the source of funds going to each. It gets very granular, so I won't go through that too directly, but really interesting stuff. You can also see what congressional committees the recipients who are in Congress sit on. This can be kind of interesting for certain companies if a congressional committee oversees matters that are of relation to the organization. Amazon's a bit tricky since it's impacted by so many different committees, but a really clear example would be things like a defense contractor giving money to someone who sits on the Armed Services Committee, or a farm giving money to someone who sits on the Agricultural Committee. And so there's a lot of different ways to slice and dice that, and you can see that here. You can also see lobbying spending. I'm not going to go into this too much depth yet. I'll probably return back to that. But in addition to the giving and election related numbers that we have on the OpenSecrets site, you can also see how much each organization gave in terms of lobbying, as well as who they were paying and what they were looking at. I know that this particular session is going to be focused on elections. We have a lot of other really great resources on lobbying, including a master class that you can see on our YouTube page. But when it comes to companies that are giving or that have individuals giving, lobbying can also inform your reporting on their election related activities. For example, you can see how much they're spending, when they ramp up spending, but also what issues they are spending around, which can in some cases, not necessarily in the case of Amazon, this is just one example of many companies that show up, hundreds of thousands of companies that show up in our data, what issues they are most specifically interested in, which can give some insight into why are they giving, who are they giving to, what are these trends. And it's one of the nice things is this is another value add. OpenSecrets gets this information from the House and Senate. We code all of the issues manually. We code all the bills that they spend on. And if you click on the number under specific issues, you can see exactly what they reported to those agencies when they were reporting their lobbying spending. I won't go into too much stuff, but if you want to see the filings, you can see those as well as whatever bills they spent on. And if if one of the bills jumps out at you and you're interested, you can also click on the bill number and see who else lobbied around that bill. And so there's lots of really great information on lobbying, but going back to those the election, not to jump, I don't want to jump around too much. So just trying to keep it streamlined there. You can search for either your race or member of Congress under candidates and office holders. You can see all of the members of Congress, all of the presidential administrations, lots of great information there. If you're looking for a specific race, we have the presidential race, of course, as well as congressional elections and profiles for each of these races. I'm just going to jump into congressional elections and look at those here. I'm going to use, let's see, I'm going to use New York, or I guess Ohio is a good example. I'm going to use Ohio as an example here, since their Senate race is one of the most expensive in terms of outside spending. But when you click on your state, whatever your state is, you can then see all the different districts that have members of Congress up for election this cycle, how much has been raised by all of the candidates in that race, as well as, if you click on the link, more detailed information. So Senate races tend to be more expensive and in some cases more interesting than House elections when it comes to the money, just because there's more of it. So using the Ohio Senate race as an example here, you can see all the different candidates that are currently running, how much was raised, how much was spent, how much cash on hand they had as of their last report. And I know we had a lot of deadline questions earlier. You can see when that last report was that is loaded on here. This is the last report for the mid-year. We won't get, and there aren't any newer ones right now until the next filing deadline. You can also see more detailed information about each of the candidates. So in addition to raised and spent, you can also see the source of their funds, whether they were getting money from small individual donors of less than $200, which means they were unitemized. So we don't necessarily know the names or the occupations of those donors, or if they came in on their large individual contributors of, excuse me, of $200 or more, or if they got money from political action committees, or if there was self-financing. And so we have this for every single candidate within that race. You can also see specific contributors. This is kind of the other side of the information that I was showing with Amazon, where you can actually see what organizations or individuals are giving. I apologize, it's a little slow right now. Oh, there we go. So you can see, for example, with Sherrod Brown, you've got Ohio State University, Cleveland Clinic. One really important caveat to this page is that it's not the organizations themselves giving, it is individuals or PACs that are affiliated with them. We've got that in big red letters up here, but just as a common pitfall that I see. So for example, looking at Ohio State University, it would be individuals who listed that organization as their employer, or their immediate family. And so, or it could be students who've listed that as well in the case of a university. And so you see a lot of organizations here. It's not always the organization. That's something that we code manually. We also have industries and sectors, which I think is another great value add that OpenSecrets has. So if you're looking for industry level data, this is something that I would recommend going to the OpenSecrets site for. You can see, for example, based on the employer listed by the contributors, we code industries. So you can see retired is the top industry here. That is not uncommon for most members of Congress. Retirees collectively are giving more than one single industry, which is very common. You can see Democratic Liberal, which means party-aligned committees. Lawyers and law firms is another big one, but everyone has different industries that they have as their top industries, and so you can see that for each of the candidates here. You can also see sectors, which are the umbrella over industries, where you can see the different, basically, umbrella. It's like an umbrella over industry where you can see, for example, finance, insurance, and real estate is the umbrella that includes banking, investment firms, private capital, like a variety of different other areas. And so if you're looking for more of that big picture, sector is a great place to look. You can also see geography, which I think is a really interesting area. And again, we have this for every candidate. We have candidate pages with all of this, as well as race pages, but I know that we're short on time, so I can't go through all of that. But you can see all the different candidates and how much money they're getting from in-state versus out of state. It's not atypical for candidates to get money from out of state, but you can see, for example, how much money they're getting from within the state that they're going to represent, and also how much money they're, in the case of members of Congress, so of the House, you can also see how much money they're getting from within the district they will represent versus outside of their district. So you can see, is the money coming from people who can vote on them, who they would represent, versus people in other states or other districts who might have interest in the outcome of the election for some other reason. And so you can see that for all of the different candidates. You can also see topped metro areas, so seeing what cities and regions are giving the most to each candidate. You can also see top zip codes and seeing who gave the most. This is just campaigns here, just to be very clear about that, looking at that. There's also an outside spending tab and a whole section of the site for that, where you can see all the candidates, how much outside groups like super PACs that can't coordinate but can spend unlimited sums on them have spent in support or opposition to those candidates, and how much has been targeted generally. You can also see what groups are actually spending in the race. You can sort by amount to see who those top spenders are, see if it's a super PAC PAC or another type of group. And one of the other nice things about this is if you're interested in one of the groups, you can just click on the group name, and there's a profile for each of the super PACs and other outside spending organizations as well, where you can see if they're spending on other races, other members of Congress, other candidates, and start to see that. You can see their candidate recipients if they gave money, as well as any of their expenditures. And so there's lots of really great information there. One more tool before I'm going to move over to questions, because I know that I want to leave room for everything, is our donor lookup tool. So if you look under elections and fundraising data, clicking donor lookup, this is a really awesome tool for investigations. You can slice and dice all donor data at the state as well as federal level by searching for, if you want to search a particular person's name, if you want to search for all donors from a particular state, from a particular zip code, from who have listed a particular employer or occupation, or have a specific recipient. We have all of those. So just to go back to Amazon, since that's a good example, we could see everyone who has listed Amazon as their employer. And we could also see all of those that gave to Ohio. Or I guess like that's one, like a state or something like that. We could do by state or by person. So just doing Amazon, you can see the recipient jurisdiction, as well as how much was given, who gave the money, who the employer was, what their occupation was. Are they a CEO? Are they, I guess in this case, a dork? Was what they listed. There's not a lot of enforcement of what you actually put, when that was given, and the amount. And so you can see you can also sort by the biggest donations or the most recent. As you see here with these big donations, there's donations at the state as well as federal level. So if you see Washington listed, that means it's a Washington state contribution. If you see federal, that means it's a federal contribution. And so you can really slice and dice this a lot of ways depending on what you're looking for. It's a great way to profile giving from employees of companies, or giving from a particular donor, seeing how much they gave at the state as well as federal level. And I know that was just a lot to throw at y'all, so I don't want to go over too much, but if you're interested in outside spending, we have a great section of the site with that, as well as things like congressional committees, members of Congress. There's so much to explore, and we're always happy to help if you're interested in particular areas. With that, I'm going to just turn over to questions. Brendan,
Anna, there was a question about, I answered a little bit, but there was a question about advertising. And so about state parties, like if state parties are sending on candidates, and we have a page, we track the fundraising on that. But I think maybe can you show them the is it the FCC page, where if you're interested in specifically in finding out about ads, we don't have specific ad information on our site, but you can go to the FCC, right? Is that correct?
You can. We used to have an amazing tool on our website that tracked the FCC, but unfortunately we lost funding for that a few years ago. So we no longer have that full text search, but the FCC, I can show their site, is amazing. It's called the Public File. They have a lot of really robust information about not only political committees, but also issue ads and everything. So you could see, for example, every ad that mentions a particular issue. It's a full text search. It's a little finicky and a little hard to use. So if you want ever to be walked through it, I'll drop a link in the chat, but I'm always happy to talk you through it. It's not the easiest tool to use. It's not our tool. So I can say that about it, but it's a really interesting tool. It's fascinating. You can search for everything from, I think I just searched for Trump for president recently. So you can see basically all of those. You could see, let's see, Americans for Prosperity is a really good one to search, since they're in a lot of different areas. So you could search the name of an organization, go over to files, and you can see every political ad, every issue they spent on, every candidate they mentioned. It can be a little overwhelming. As you can see, there's 23,000 results, and it's all PDFs, but it's a really interesting database. I'll drop a link in the chat, and happy to talk y'all through it. Any other questions?
The question that was back from a bit ago, and I might need some clarification about how comprehensive is this on different levels of the government for campaign finance, for the bill sponsored, all federal, all state. So
I think it depends on level, honestly. Like, just not to jump in, Brendan, if you wanted to say anything.
Go
It
ahead.
definitely depends on the level. I know we talked about lobbyists earlier, that there are only 18 states right now that were required to be reported. Our
Yeah.
information is as comprehensive as it can be, based on the information available. So if the filings are out there, they will end up on our site. The data will end up on our site, but there's a lot that isn't reported. So for example, in the dark money space, there's a lot of groups that are spending on advertisements that don't report that to the Federal Election Commission. That won't show up on our site. I'm always happy to help track that stuff down, because I find it fascinating, but there's a lot more about that. We do have all the states that make it available, I believe. Brendan, could you speak to that if we have all the state campaign finance data? My understanding is we have all
Yeah.
the states that make it
Yeah,
available.
all candidate data, you know, for, as I said, you know, legislature, statewide offices, and then, yeah, all the information on ballot measures. It does, you know, the ballot measure is a little tricky because we have to go out and identify those spenders. So we, you know, it's not like there isn't necessarily, depending on the state, but there isn't necessarily a sort of a flag that says this is a ballot committee. We have to kind of, some cases we have to go out and see who's spending money. But so eventually we get all that. So the one thing, as far as, you know, talk about at the state level, is we do not collect data on just like regular PACs. If just sort of a traditional PAC that raises money and then makes contributions to candidates, we don't collect those at this point. If it's a PAC or say a super PAC that is engaged in independent expenditures and that state reports independent expenditures, then we will collect all the donor information on that PAC so that we will report on their independent expenditures, and then we'll have the information on who the donors were to that organ, that PAC that was making independent expenditures. And then there was sort of an ad, I posted it I replied in the chat there, but and we do collect the state parties. So we do have the information on all the money raised by state party committees and caucus committees, like, you know, things like the, you know, might be the, you know, Democratic Senate campaign committee for, you know, Iowa or something like that. We'll collect that as a party committee.
And I know we're coming up on time. I see a couple questions about accessing the webinar. We are recording this. We will send, hopefully Zoom will send out a copy of the webinar to everyone. If for some reason you don't receive that copy by the end of today or tomorrow, please email us and we are happy to send it over to you directly. We would love for you to share this with your colleagues. You can email us at press@opensecrets.org. We can drop, I believe Tim Sandler dropped that in the chat already. Please feel free to reach out to us. That goes to both of us, so it's an easy way to follow up on any questions, and we can always loop in our colleagues if there's anything else. But happy to share the webinar. We're also always happy to schedule additional trainings if there are particular areas of this that you are most interested in. There should be a survey that follows up after the Zoom call to get ideas and feedback. So if you have any ideas, thoughts, or criticisms for us, we would love to hear them. Since it's such a robust website, that's such a big issue, there's so much to cover. So if you're ever interested in follow-up trainings or even customized trainings for your particular newsroom, we are always happy to schedule those as well. And just to send out one big thank you for today, this training was made possible by the Knight Foundation through their election hub. There's a lot of really great trainings there as well, both in the money and politics space, but also in elections generally. I highly recommend checking that out too. But yes, please feel free to follow up with us with any questions, whether it's about this webinar or if you're ever working on a story and we can be helpful, either sending data, providing insights, helping with research, fact checking, the full gamut of whatever we can do to be helpful. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us. The easiest way is probably that press@opensecrets.org email, but you're always welcome to email directly. I'm just at Anna@OpenSecrets, but that goes to both of us, so it's probably the easiest way is the press@opensecrets.org, and we're always more than happy to help with any of that. And thank you all so much for attending. Please share with your colleagues. We have a couple other webinars coming up later this month. So if you do have colleagues who couldn't make it to this one but are interested in attending, please let us know. Feel free to email us and we're always happy to make sure they get an invitation to the next set of webinars, or we can schedule one. And yeah, I think that's pretty much everything. Obviously, I could talk about this for hours on end, as you can tell, but look forward to keeping in touch with all of you and seeing what you do with all of this information. Thank you so much and have a great rest of your day.
Okay, thanks, Anna.
Thank you, Brendan. And thank you, Tim, for coordinating all of this.
My pleasure.